Wilson for the touchdown.
All right, what's up, everybody? Out of Hibernation is back, man. We had to take a couple weeks off. I was sick for the first week, and then Turtle, our guy, had some surgery. So, it wasn't started the show, and then it was an ideal situation for us to, kind of keep it running. Unfortunately, with me getting sick and you having surgery. But how you doing, Turtle?
Man, I'm good. I'm, feeling good. Glad to be back, ready to talk some Bears and, chat with Erik Lambert and have a really good show here.
Yeah, Erik Lambert, man. We've talked to him back when we were with previous.
What did they say? What did they say in the business? Down the dial.
Yeah, down the dial or down the. I don't even know what it would be called on.
Yeah, I don't know what it'd be called here, but
on streaming. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, Erik Lambert, he's part of Sports Mockery. Real cool follow on Twitter. I enjoy a lot of the Sports Mockery stuff that they post. I want to talk to him about one of the things that he had written about the Packer loss being worse for Nagy than people really realize. So that's and I with them, I think that we as Bears fans, we know what it's like to lose to Green Bay, and we know that the higher ups, especially Virginia, she really does not like losing to Green Bay, and as much as they didn't get blown out last week, I still think that with the whole Aaron Rodgers, I still own you thing, I think that's a bigger glaring thing than people realize.
So I keep hearing that, and I think this whole "I own you" thing, I think it's really gotten blown out of proportion, right? I mean, so that was in response to the fans. Mm-hmm. It had nothing to do with the Bears, or he didn't say I own the Bears. He said I own you, as in like the Bears fans,
right?
Because he does, right? I mean, how many times have we seen the Hail Mary with 3 seconds left, the touchdown, the 70-yard touchdown drive with less than a minute left, all these different things, the games that they've played where he's broken the hearts of Bears fans time after time after time. And I think that's more what he was saying was, I own you fans. I control this, which he does. I mean, shit, the best thing Jay Cutler ever did was he said, a rivalry, you have to be competitive.
Yeah.
And he's right. If you're not competitive, it's one-sided, it's not much of a rivalry anymore.
And that's kind of where we've been.
Right. So hopefully, we can look forward to I hate to sound, the quote unquote Cub vanish, but we can look forward to next year and hope that this Bears team is competitive next year. But I thought they showed a lot. The first half of that game, the first 3 quarters, they were in it. They were, you weren't sure. Even going to the fourth quarter, you were like, okay, you know what? They might pull this one out. They just, I don't know, man. I think we talked about it, a while back on a show, and I mean, I don't know that there's a scenario other than the fact that they're just embarrassed, right, for the entire season. I don't know that there's a scenario that Matt Nagy doesn't come back. And I know people have told us that, they're going to make a change. They're going to do this. There's a first time for everything. But, I'll believe it when I see it, because I don't even the offseason press conferences we saw, it didn't seem like anybody had any interest in anything football other than just saying, well, Ryan and Matt run football for us.
Right. But that's so frustrating, man. Like, as Bears fans, like I know that Rodgers was talking towards us, right, as a fan base, but when you put out as much bad competition as you have since going all the way back to, we've all heard the numbers since Favre took over. You know what I mean? This rivalry has been completely one-sided. It's been the Bears just getting destroyed. Oh, if Rodgers doesn't play, then they'll win. But other than that, man, and my frustration, I think, is more towards the organization than the actual Packers. You know what I mean? And the fact that the Bears just haven't put a product out on the field that even warrants us having hope to win against a team like Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, then it's hard for us Bears fans, especially us that really like to talk sports and stuff like that. But I think it's all about setting the expectation, right?
Right.
We're all looking for the Bears to beat Green Bay and to beat everybody, but in everybody's mind, Green Bay is a Super Bowl threat.
Right.
Green Bay is a Super Bowl contending team this year. The Bears are not. So
True.
The Bears don't have any business beating Green Bay. They don't have any business being in the game with Green Bay. But I think we're seeing things that you can take and you can put forward to what you're building on.
Right.
Justin Fields, he's shown flashes.
Yep.
He's had limited opportunities. They've not really let him throw downfield too much. But he's shown flashes. And Khalil Herbert looks like a stud, right?
Yep.
Khalil Herbert looks like a stud. And you look at different teams like Cleveland and the San Franciscos and all these teams that you say, well, whoever you put back there because of the scheme, they're going to be able to run the ball.
Right.
Well, either the Bears are the best team at going out and finding running backs, which I don't believe they are, or there's something to that with this Bears offense and Matt Nagy offense that David Montgomery, Damian Williams, and now Khalil Herbert have all had not just success, but a lot of success.
Right.
You put Khalil Herbert in there his first time with that kind of touches, look, 100 yards. You put Montgomery back there, 100 yards. Damian Williams goes back there. He's running all over people.
Right.
So you can see things like that. And especially with, at best, a mediocre offensive line, right? Like at best.
At best, yes. I would. Well, I think they've done pretty well in the run block.
Well, that's the thing. So then
you
say, well, is it part of the scheme? Does the scheme protect the run game, right?
Right.
Which then hopefully the only caveat to that is you hope that Matt Nagy doesn't find his inner Matt Nagy and decide to stop running the ball again. But hopefully
which is more likely to happen than not.
Right. Like we're just waiting for one of those weeks where he's just like, oh, we can't run the ball. We ran it twice and we got stopped. Cool. We're gonna ask Justin Fields to throw the ball 50 times today.
Yeah, no.
Which that could be today.
That's what I was just going to say. I think that today is one of those games where you're going up against a run defense like Tampa Bay, man. They're one of the top, right? They got Villa, who's probably without a doubt top 3 pass defender or rush defenders in the league right now.
For sure.
And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Fields and Matt Nagy to have to throw the ball more because that's where Tampa Bay is weak, is in the secondary.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at that front 3 and, I know a lot of times I'm not sure they're running at that other end, but you got Vea in the middle and you got Adonican Sue at that defensive end spot too. So you got those two, and then the really good tandem at middle linebacker, inside linebacker in the 340 inside linebacker with Levante David and who's that, Devin White?
Yeah, I think so.
The really young stud linebacker they got over there.
Yep.
I always want to call him Devin Bush, but it's not him. I think it's Devin White.
Yeah, no, it's not Devin Bush. Isn't Bush on our team?
No, Devin Bush is he's inside linebacker in Pittsburgh, maybe?
Oh, it's Deion Bush plays for the Bears.
Yeah, we got Deion Bush.
My fault.
No, you're good. But yeah, so I mean, you got, 4 really good run stoppers there.
Right.
And teams just haven't been able to run the ball on Tampa, but you can throw on them. And now Richard Sherman's out this week. So now you've got even one less guy back there in the secondary. Really, the main guy you got to worry about is Antoine Whitfield Jr.
Right.
But, other than that, you can throw on this team. So it might be one of those games where you see, I guess you could say Bill Lazor. I don't buy the whole Bill Lazor calling the play thing, but
I don't either.
The three-headed monster of DeFilippo, Nagy, and Lazor, if they decided today they can't run the ball, do they start throwing it a lot? And if you can't run the ball, you can't run play action. So
right.
You're going to have to see Fields get out of the pocket. And I think, a lot of it too, you see Fields, he's hesitant to run. And, sometimes there's lanes there and he wants to stay in the pocket and throw the ball. I was talking to somebody earlier this week and I said, they asked me about Justin Fields. I said, it reminds me of the year that Michael Vick came out and said, I'm going to prove everybody wrong and show them I can throw from the pocket. And he wouldn't run. He would stay in the pocket and try to throw the ball, and then he would hesitate to run. And by the time he decided the lanes were closed, I mean, there's lanes there. I mean, you're seeing it, you're starting to see – my big thing is when you see the announcers call things out, it's bad, right? Because that means it's blatant. Because most of the announcers aren't picking up a lot of the real football stuff.
Right.
But there's lanes there where he could take off and run, and he's just not doing it. I don't know if it's because he wants to hit that deep ball or he thinks somebody's going to come open. But, I mean, the year that the Bears, the first year under Matt Nagy, when they had all the success was you saw Mitch pick up a lot of third downs with his legs,
right.
Even 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. And, Fields a lot faster than Mitch Trubisky. He's more like a Lamar Jackson. And
right.
You see, that Baltimore coaching staff has taken that offense and built it around Lamar and said, okay, we're going to call quarterback runs. We're going to tell you, you're only looking at one side of the field. And if it's not there, you're going to take off. So,
right. Yep.
We'll see. I'd like to see more Justin Fields runs today than just say, okay, we're going to throw the ball 50 times.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, man. I think he's in that college mindset where okay, I can roll out of the pocket and hold it, let my guys get deep and then just launch it. And somebody will go up and catch it because
you see these guys in college all the time. You see if they buy 3-4 seconds with their legs, a receiver runs by somebody finally and he's wide open 50 yards down the field.
Right.
That doesn't happen. It does, but not on a regular basis. Does that happen in the NFL? NFL guys are better. They're faster. They can stay with receivers. They can do different things. There's coverages that they run where you can't throw deep and they make you take the underneath. So we'll see it. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for sure today. But I think they beat them last time they played them. Brady, the infamous Brady, forgetting it was 4th down.
Yeah,
but
the 4th down fiasco.
But you never know. The defense is playing good enough to be in the game. We'll see today without Robert Quinn. And it feels weird to say this, but we'll see without Robert Quinn if that defense can still get pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about, we have somebody who we've talked to before, our guy Erik Lambert over at Sports Mockery. We will bring him in. Erik, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Good, thanks, man. I appreciate it. So we were just talking a little bit about how this game could. Me and Turtle have some hope, I guess, that if the Bears are able to open up the field, that they have a shot at beating Tampa Bay. But before we get to that, man, I read your article that you posted on Sports Mockery about loss to the Packers and how bad it was for Matt Nagy. Could you go a little bit in depth on that and why you think that loss hurt him more than any other loss up to this point?
Well, I mean, you really don't have to look much further than the record itself for him. 1-6 against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, losing in general is something the McCaskies don't like, or any owner would like, obviously. But losing to the Packers as repeatedly as the Bears have done over the years, that's what hurts more than anything, because they still view this as a rivalry, even though, if you look at the record lately, it doesn't really look like one. But, they've been so close a number of times to toppling Rodgers, but every single time he just keeps finding a way to get out of there with a win against the Bears. And it's become very frustrating for the McCaskies. And the fact that Matt Nagy continues not being able to keep up with Rodgers on the scoreboard, 14 points this past time, and it's been low considerably. I mean, everyone remembers that 10-3 debacle against the Packers in 2019. So This isn't a great look for Nagy that he can't beat the Packers and he can't score, two of the things he was sort of brought in to try and change. So while the rest of the season is still ahead of them, they still got 11 games. They can still, get this thing going, get the offense going. The bottom line is, it's still a really bad mark against Matt Nagy that he can't beat this one team that seems to always stand in their way of success.
Now, do you think that that's just the caliber of players that like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers were? I mean, because the Bears have had decent defenses at times when they've played against these Packer teams, but is it overall like those two guys are just that good, or do you still think it's a positional issue where there's just not enough talent on mostly the offensive side of the ball through this whole last 20 years?
It's you got to say it. It's definitely a factor. I mean, when you play Hall of Fame quarterbacks, you need to play a nearly perfect game every single time to beat them. We saw Brady do it to the AFC East for years. It's really hard to beat these guys unless you have a quarterback of at least similar caliber, which obviously the Bears have not. Jay Cutler, Rex Grossman, Mitch Trubisky. We've seen so many give it a shot, but they weren't anywhere near what Rodgers is. So yeah, it's difficult to beat them, but there's still been some games in this entire process where it felt like they should have beaten them, but because of one reason or another, sometimes a coaching blunder, they couldn't get it done. So this is why there's so much pressure on Nagy to finally get them over the hump, which is why that game at Lambeau later this year is probably going to be pretty important for him, especially if the Bears are fighting for a wild card spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There was a lot of heat after the Cleveland game, that Nagy is just in over his head. And I truly believe that every time he goes up against a coach that's gets outcoached every single time, whether it's like last week, the fiasco with calling a timeout before challenging a play, or just the inability to make a determination on who's going to call plays. Do you think he's in over his head?
Offensively, absolutely. I think he's been trying to mirror the Andy Reid approach for so long because he trusts it. I mean, he's seen it work for so many years, both in Philadelphia and Kansas City, that he thinks this particular type of system works when everybody does their job. The problem is he can't get everybody to do their job on a consistent basis. The discipline's always a problem. The clock management, the game management, it's always one issue or another. Penalties at the worst possible time, substitutions that lead to bad timeouts. I mean, we've been seeing this for multiple years now. This isn't something that just cropped up this season. So unfortunately, from that aspect, Nagy has failed his job as a head coach. Now, there are other aspects of him that warrant him sticking around. The leadership is obviously there. He's managed to maintain control of the locker room. He gets his guys to play hard. Those are valuable things. But until he fixes the offense, he's going to continue to be on the bad side of Bears fans because that was primarily what he was brought in to do. Fix an offense that has been perennially broken for decades now. So, unless he figures out a way, unless Bill Lazor finally gets Justin Fields going and they actually start to score points, the best way I can put this is he swallows his pride and brings in an offensive coordinator that can actually produce points, he's always going to see his job probably on the line until the Bears start winning in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is, I think that the ownership group holds those playoff berths a little too high, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like last year, the only reason the Bears made it is because they added that extra team, and then they showed in that game that they weren't on that level of a playoff team, and they got routed by the Saints, and it looked embarrassing. You had guys, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and they just looked sloppy. And I think that there's an issue with him in terms of like, if he doesn't fully give over the play calling, I don't think he can, he's got to take those blinders off, and he doesn't. And I don't think until he fully gives up the play calling, like you said, that this team really has any shot of moving forward. It seems like every year, it's the same thing. They're moving, one step forward, two steps back type of thing. Then, I also noticed that you had posted something about Nagy or Pace being, who's the bigger issue. I think that it's Ryan Pace, personally. He's been here longer. He's had, more time to make mistakes. But who do you think is the bigger issue at this moment?
I mean, you could make a case for both of them. I mean, from Nagy's perspective, his offensive system doesn't work. Even, when he's had good players. If you look at Nagy's process, he hasn't really made anybody that much better in regards to his offense, particularly. I mean, Allen Robinson was already good when he got here, so he's pretty much been that player. Whereas, if you look at all the other players he's brought in, nobody's really taken a significant step up. So it's sort of a chicken or the egg kind of thing. Is Nagy really the problem, or are the players he's been given the problem?
Right.
Now, when you look at it from a pure talent perspective, I think Ryan Pace has improved from where he was initially. From 2015 to 2017, I think he did a really bad job, especially on the offensive side of finding talent. But I think he's gotten better since then. Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery have been really nice examples of that. I think James Daniels is a better player than he gets credit for as well. So I think he has improved, but he still hasn't had that big hit that he's sort of had on the defensive side in terms of finding talent. And I think until he gets there, he's going to continue to have people on his case about not being good enough at sort of building this team to where it needs to be to compete for a championship. I personally like Pace more than I like Nagy in terms of them doing their job better, because Pace is good at finding late round talent. He's good at finding, cheap free agents who can contribute. He's been better about finding quality talent earlier in the draft compared to where he was early, in his GM tenure. So in terms of improvement, I think Pace has improved considerably more at his job than Nagy has.
Sure.
Which is why if you're going to keep one, I'd keep Pace, even though you have him hiring a head coach for a third time is absolutely unprecedented. Nobody's ever seen something like that before. So, which is why I think you sort of have to treat them as a package deal. If you're going to move on from one, you probably have to move on from the other. But if I were to choose one, I'd still keep Pace, only because he's proven to be a little bit better at his job than Nagy has.
Right. And Turtle, I don't know how you feel about that. I feel like there's no way you can keep one without the other. You know what I mean? If you're going to keep them, they keep both of them. Otherwise, if you're moving on, you got to move on from each.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a package deal. I think they're, and because not only are they treated as a package deal, GM head coach, but I think they're treated, for all purposes, Ryan Pace isn't the GM. He's the director of football operations, right? He's the head guy. And Matt Nagy, yeah, he's the head coach, but he's like the head coach and assistant director of football operations. Like they're 1 and 2. Like they're the top two guys, and everything goes through them. But I think Ryan Pace is, if you had to pick one to get rid of, I think it's Ryan Pace. Now, obviously, in all reality, it's near impossible. It's been done, but it's near impossible to get rid of the GM, keep the head coach, and say, okay, well, we're going to bring in a new GM, but you're stuck with this head coach for a year, make it work. Right. I think the only way that becomes a reality is if the next GM is Lou Riddick. If he's the GM, then I think maybe that's more of a shot, because him and Matt Nagy are so close already, and they have that rapport that they might be able to make it work. And he might tell him, okay, look, I can make this work. Give me a year with him. We can make this work. And maybe that's reality. But I think, Eric, to your point, Ryan Pace has gotten better, but I think he's gotten better coincidentally as Matt Nagy's taken more of a role in finding offensive players in the draft and different things. Justin Fields, from everything we heard, they said, what's going to be different this time around? Why should Bear fans think that you're going to get it right after you took Mitch last time? And I think a lot of those answers to that question that the Bears came up with was, well, Matt's going to be involved this time. Matt's going to be picking the quarterback. So I think they've already started to take some of that and identify, Ryan's really, really good at rounds 4 through 7, but he struggles at 1 through 3. And as a GM, I think 1 through 3, you got to hit. You can't miss. If you miss on a 7th rounder, you miss on a 5th rounder, people aren't going to hold your feet to the fire and be like, damn, you missed on that 5th round pick. How dare you? But when you missing on first round pick after first round pick, you're trading up when, and I know the reports are out there that he had to, but I mean, everybody said you didn't have to trade up to get Mitch in the first place. Right. But you're giving up draft picks to go get players that you shouldn't have taken where you took them, let alone trading up to take them there. I think Mooney, that was a Matt Nagy pick. I think Mooney is, and you hear when Matt Nagy talks about him, I think that's his Tyreek Hill. The problem, and we talked about it on our last show, was, in Kansas City, when all else fails, they pitch the ball to Tyreek Hill, and he makes 8 guys miss, and he's in the end zone. The Bears don't have that guy. They don't have a Tyreek Hill to just make everything look better. You see Patrick Mahomes is probably playing the worst football of his career right now. And Kansas City, they're losing games, but the offense is still putting up points. That's because you got a Travis Kelce, you got a Tyreek Hill, you got all these pieces in place that when you have to worry about them, somebody's going to be open. And the offensive line doesn't have to do as much. I think if given the right players, and again, I don't think that they do just one, but if given the right players, I think we see this offense do a little more. Like you said, we don't see anybody get a whole lot better, but we don't, a lot of them, they are who they were when they are who they are when they got here. It's who they are now, but we start to see some of these young players like Mooney take the steps forward. Cleo Herbert looks good. Montgomery looks good. The Damian Williams was a Kansas City move. And, you showed he knows the offense. He makes it work. I just think this offense could be different if you have that run game balance that, because you're not Kansas City, you're not Patrick Mahomes, you don't have those guys. So you do need some balance to keep defenses off balance and, not knowing what's coming.
Right.
But if you could, the offensive line has to get better. And I just don't know that I think this team, the defense is good enough, and I think the Fields will make enough plays that at the end of the year, ownership is just going to chalk it up to, well, look at Justin Fields. He's getting better. This is the guy. Matt picked him. We're gonna stay with it, and we're going to ride it out.
Right. Well, we could argue back and forth between Nagy or Pace all day. I feel like both have real glaring issues, and it'll be interesting to see where the record is at the end of the season in terms of like what's going to happen to those two guys and who kind of develops is another big thing to really watch for.
I think there's one other thing. Sorry, I forgot to say this. I think there's one other thing, and Eric, I'd love to see what hear what you think about this. But if you go back to that press conference, there was a lot of speculation. I think everyone's kind of forgot about it, but there was a lot of speculation that they've already been given new contracts. If that is the case, that they were given new contracts, that could come into play too, because now you're talking about not just 1 year left. If they've been given, 3-4 more years, now you're talking about a whole different scale of what you owe Matt Nagy and what you owe Ryan Pace and deciding if you get rid of them. Eric, do you think that's what happened? I mean, obviously the biggest glaring thing that stood out was them refusing to answer how long was left on their contracts.
I've heard that a number of times, and, I understand why a lot of people would think that because, McCaskey really likes Pace and Nagy. He really, believes in the vision that they have for the team. But the one thing I do buy into is that, I don't know, I think it was Pace. I think they extended Pace 1 year so his contract would line up with Nagy's going into 2022. That I've heard enough to believe is true. In terms of both of them getting extensive contract extensions, I don't really buy into that. I think this is their second to last year. And then going into 2022, the Bears will make a decision. Are we moving in the right direction with Fields? Is the team looking good enough to where they can probably make progress in the near future? If so, then they'll get their contract extensions, because they're obviously not going to move into 2022 with both guys in a lame duck status of having only 1 year left, because then you won't be able to attract free agents, making decent trades and hope to extend guys you might trade for. So obviously they're thinking about extensions, but I don't think they've done them yet.
Right. Well, now on to this next week, right? Tampa Bay. I'm pretty sure a lot of us don't expect a positive outcome from this game. Eric, what do you think is going to happen in Tampa Bay today?
It's really unfortunate because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are such a bad matchup for this particular Bears team. The Bears offensive identity right now is running the ball, and there is no better run defense in the NFL by a wide margin than Tampa Bay. I mean, you got Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea right there in the middle. It's so hard to run against them. Then you got those athletic linebackers right behind them. So the Bears probably won't be able to run, so they're going to have to throw. Now, Tampa Bay secondary is so riddled with injuries. You should be able to attack them down the field, which is something Justin Fields likes to do, and he's actually pretty good at when he gets time. And that therein lay the problem with Tampa Bay. Their pass rushers already are pretty good, and then they have a defensive coordinator in Todd Bowles who loves to blitz, and thus far, Fields has struggled against the blitz, which is typical for a rookie. And Bowles isn't going to hold anything back. He's aggressive as hell. He always has been. So he's going to throw in as many blitzes as it takes to make Fields uncomfortable. The question will be, can the Bears craft a game plan to counter this? The good news in that regard is Matt Nagy is friends with Bowles. He knows Bowles inside and out. They've known each other forever. So if anybody will be able to craft something that can counter what Bowles is going to do, it would probably be Nagy. The problem is the Bears are a horrible screen team. They're not the best slant throwing team in the world. So all these counters you can have against the blitz, the Bears haven't really been good at both this year and in years past. So it's really hard to trust that the offense will be able to handle the Bucs defense in that regard. There will be opportunities, but are they equipped to take advantage of them? You really can't trust it. On the other side, I would have felt good about the Bears defense going into this game because Rob Gronkowski's out, Antonio Brown is out, some other guys are banged up. So you'd think they'd have a chance to at least compete, but now you don't have Robert Quinn, you don't have Akeem Hicks. The defense is banged up now, and if you can't pressure Tom Brady, you're not winning the football game. We all know this at this point. He's been playing some of his best football at 44 years old. The guy is an absolute machine. So if you can't pressure him, it's pretty much all over. And Khalil Mack had a great game against Tampa Bay the last time they played. So you really hope that he might be able to, generate something. Maybe Travis Gibson steps up because he's been playing well when he's been getting opportunities. If the secondary can at least hold up, then maybe you got a shot to at least hold them to maybe, 24, 27 points, and then pray somehow the offense can at least keep it competitive. But in terms of the matchup, it's really hard to envision the Bears winning this game.
Yeah, it's one of those games where it's like, should I find something else to do this Sunday during the day instead of knowing that I'm going to sit down to watch a drubbing of the Chicago Bears? And it's unfortunate, but I like your point about getting pressure on Brady. The problem is Tom Brady gets rid of the ball really quickly, and it's going to take, I think, more than just that front four for the Bears this week to really generate the pressure needed to get Brady off of his spot. I don't know how, but the guy has gone backwards in time in terms of how well he's played. And it's, he lost last year to the debacle in the fourth where he forgot it was fourth down and they lose, which, maybe if he doesn't forget it's fourth, they have a different play call. But I think the way Tom Brady is he's looking at this game, he circled it and he said, I was embarrassed last season. I'm going to come out and I'm going to just embarrass this team. And unfortunately, the tackling of this team is a real issue right now. Mm-hmm. And when you got a guy like Brady who gets rid of the ball to these big targets, the tight ends especially, I think that the secondary of the Bears is going to have a real tough time getting these guys to the ground. And it could be real ugly. Turtle, what do you think of this game?
I think the biggest thing today I'm afraid of, and it's weird to say this with offense as Tom Brady and Mike Evans in it, but the thing I'm afraid of the most is Leonard Fournette. I think, the Bears have struggled with running stopping the runs up the middle, those power runs up the middle. And now without Akeem Hicks and, with less pressure from the outsides with Robert Quinn, I think, Leonard Fournette's playing some of his best football right now too. And obviously part of that is because he gets to run the ball when everybody's afraid of Tom Brady throwing it. But, Fournette's going to run the ball. And now, we saw last week, the last game out, now he's catching the ball too. The thing about this Bears defense is they're really good up front at getting to the quarterback. They're not as good in the secondary, and they're really not good in open field tackling. And when you've got, big guys like Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette and O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate and, some of these other guys that Tampa has, I just don't know that I trust this Bears defense to come up with that key stop in the open field. If even Jalen Johnson, some of these guys, that are better in coverage, they're not as good tackling. Jalen's pretty good at tackling, but some of these other guys, Kendall Vildor and Deion Bush and some of these guys, especially Eddie Jackson, he's never been a hitter by any means. But, I think that's a big area of concern is that not only is Brady going to complete passes if we're not going to run the ball, but can they make the tackles when the guys do get the ball? A little swing pass to Giovanni Bernard, like Eric talked about the Bears, as bad as the Bears are at screen passes, that's how good Tampa is.
Right.
And you hit Giovanni Bernard out of the backfield or, when was it Tyler Johnson, some of these guys that they have on the outside, the speedy guys, and then you get to the big guys. Can you get the big guys down? The Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette. That's what worries me the most is the poor tackling that we've seen week in, week out. Even when this Bears defense has stopped people from the end zone, they've given up a lot of yardage and just come up with stops near the end zone.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely going to be. Oh man, I'm always a glass half empty kind of guy for the most part when it comes to the Bears, and I don't see it going any differently this week. My last, Eric, really is, so if it goes as bad as I think it's going to go today, what do you see happening? I mean, the fan base went nuts after that Cleveland game. If this is like that Cleveland game and Justin Fields, because they can't run the ball, is just getting annihilated, Chicago might actually riot. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, they're obviously going to be upset, and rightfully so, because the offense should be better around Justin Fields now than what it was against Cleveland, because it was his first start. It was a hostile environment against a great pass rush behind an offensive line that has struggled in pass protection, and he looked like he wasn't ready.
Right.
Since then, he has looked better. I think the stats haven't quite shown it yet, but there have been signs of him looking more comfortable in the pocket, making his reads, going through his progressions, which is exactly what you want to see. It's just a question of him continuing to build that confidence. Now, when you go up against an aggressive team like the Bucs, we're going to probably try and emulate that Cleveland style as much as possible, good pass rush, try and confuse him as much as possible. If he looks that way again, it will look like a regression to everybody watching that game, which will immediately put all that pressure back on Matt Nagy once again. So I don't think they're going to fire him mid-season because the Bears have never done that, but I do think another loss like that is not going to help his odds of coming back after this year. Now, the question is, if the loss is that bad, what happens in the next two games? Do they rebound against the 49ers and Steelers? Two teams I think they can beat. They're not gimmies, obviously, but I think those are two winnable games. If they lose really bad to those teams as well, then you have to start changing the conversation a little bit. Like, is Nagy starting to lose the team all of a sudden? I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's that possibility considering how bad this game can actually get. So it always depends on how bad the loss is. If we're talking they lose by 14, 17 points, fine, you lost to the defending champs, you're banged up, move on to the next week. If you lose by 30 or even 40 points, then the conversation shifts to, oh my God, this team is way worse than we expected, and they're starting to fall apart. So, the way things are right now, I think Nagy and Pace are going to finish out the season, and then we're going to see where we are at the end of it. But if the blowouts start to stack up similar to 2014, I don't know if George McCaskey wants to go through something like that again, and he might just pull the plug and say, okay, let's get started, see if we have anything on this coaching staff that might actually have head coaching possibilities, and then we're going to start thinking about, how we're going to build around Justin moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that this defense right now isn't capable of letting a team beat them by 50 points, 40 points, but again, like, that we've watched this Tampa Bay team, and when they're on, they're clicking, they're moving the ball, and the lack of tackling, like I stated before, is really kind of, it's a glaring issue, and I think that Tom Brady knows that. You're right. I don't think that they will fire Nagy mid-season, but if, like you said, if this game is ugly and then you lose that are actually winnable games, especially in Pittsburgh, then you're looking at the Ravens after that, and it doesn't get much easier for this team. And you have to kind of look at the facts and be like, hey, this is where we're at. I don't know. I hope that it doesn't get that ugly where the locker room starts to pull away from the coaching, and because I do think Nagy did a lot of good in terms of changing the mindset in that locker room after, Trestman and John Fox. And I think that's a lot of progress that I'd hate to see go to waste.
Mhm.
Do you think that, if there were signs of that they would move on from him before it got too bad?
Considering the experiences that they had in 2014 and how bad they got towards the end, yeah, I think they would, but I don't think it's going to get that bad. Nagy's got this survival instinct that he's demonstrated a number of times in 2019 after a 4-game losing streak, last year after the 6-game losing streak. He has an ability to hold it together and maintain calm in the midst of struggles. So I don't think it's going to get that bad. He has the leadership qualities to navigate issues like this. After the Cleveland game, they won 2 straight. So that's another demonstration of his ability to refocus and get the team moving on to the next week. So I think he's going to be fine in that regard. The question becomes, will the offense improve at all? And will they be competitive enough to at least have a shot at a wild card berth, in December, or
Right.
will they be completely out of it by then?
Absolutely. Well, Eric, I told you I'd get you out of here by 10:15. I appreciate you jumping on with us, man. You want to let everybody know where they can find you?
You can find me at Erik Lambert 1 on Twitter and on sportsmockery.com. I write for them all the time, and feel free to talk football with me.
Awesome, man. Thank you again for jumping on, Eric. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Pleasure, man.
All right, man. That's our guy, Erik Lambert from Sports Mockery. I always like talking football with that guy. I know that there's some people who don't enjoy his takes. I think, he gives you takes kind of similar to the way I think. Like, I really feel that Packer loss hurt Nagy quite a bit. I think if they have another loss like that this week, that it could really put this team into a downward spiral. I know Nagy hasn't shown any glimpses of that happening before, but I do think that without the wins, I think have been what has really helped keep this team. The bounce back wins is what's kept this team from imploding. And you lose to Rodgers and then Tom Brady, you can chalk it up to, those are 2 of the best quarterbacks you'll probably ever see in football. But in the same regard, like, this offense has been in the works for Pace has been here for 7 years now, and
7.
He's failed to really put any difference making offensive talent on the field in 7 years, and that offensive line is a mess. And he always talked about when he came in, build through the draft, and that hasn't seemed to be how it's worked. At least in the first 1, 2, 3 rounds of the draft, like you had said. What do you think happens today?
Man, it can. I think they lose. Right? Unfortunately, this is one of those games where it's not like, well, they might win. They might. I think they lose. It's just a matter of how bad.
Right.
The Bear fan in me and the optimistic Bear fan in me wants to say that, with this defense, if they play good and blah, 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 and they this and they that, they could pull out a late win. Obviously, it's the NFL. Anything can happen.
Right.
Like they say, both sides get paid.
Right. That's right.
The Bears players are getting paid too, so they by all means, they could win the game. I don't think they do. I think they lose. If they can keep it close and Justin Fields plays well, especially in a game that we think he's going to throw the ball more, if he plays well and you start to see some of those plays where you're like, that's the quarterback I've been waiting to see, and they lose by even like Eric said, a couple scores, but Justin plays good and the offense looks decent. Obviously you're probably going to win if the offense looks really good, but if the offense looks good and looks like they're taking steps forward, you go into 2 games that are definitely winnable. Right. If you can if you can do that and you can keep this game from getting ugly and you can go win the next 2 games, now you're looking at, is that enough that holds Matt Nagy's job going into next year already? Right. But I think they have the capability of keeping it close because Tampa, no Antonio Brown, no Gronk, really beat up in the secondary. I think they lose by, I'm going to say 10. I think, I think they keep it close enough where maybe, Tampa runs the ball a little more, takes some time off the clock, and it winds up limiting their own possessions. And I think the offense can do some good things today. The secondary is beatable, and if they can beat the blitz a few times and hit Mooney or Robinson on a slant behind the blitz, I mean, you can move the ball. And we've seen them take some long drives before, which is going to take some time off the clock. And the one thing they have going for him is Santos has been pretty accurate that, if they can get in field goal range, he's usually a guaranteed 3 points. So you always have that in your back pocket. The big thing, and it's going to be all year, man, the big thing is Justin Fields. Does he look like he took steps forward? Does he look closer to being the franchise quarterback? Does he look closer to Deshaun Watson than he does Mitchell Trubisky? All those things.
He does have moments. He does have moments where he looks pretty shaken out there, doesn't he?
Absolutely, he does.
I know Mitch had those moments too, but you can definitely tell. I think in the game when the pressure, the blitz is getting to him, and it's like most quarterbacks, but you hope to kind of see, like you said, a little bit of a learning pattern where he sees this is how this blitz is going to be coming at you. Maybe he can pull a tight end in or change the route to make it a quicker
out. Going against the blitz today, we saw you see in Jacksonville they struggled for a few weeks, but now Trevor Lawrence is looking better every week. You saw, and part of it's because of the coach, right? That's Urban Meyer's offense. But I think a lot of it is that you brought a spread offense or those aspects of it to the NFL. And NFL runs spread, but it makes the defense have to defend because you're spreading them out. I wonder if maybe because that's the offense Fields is from, I wonder if maybe – especially a day like today where it might be hard to run the ball, if we see them say, okay, you know what, let's spread out a little more. Obviously, that means that Fields is going to have to identify the blitz and be able to run to get away from it because you have less protection. But, those quick passes, the blitz killers, as they call them, we'll see if they put some of those in or do they just, be who they are every week and just line up with that. We're going to run our offense and think we're good enough to beat everybody and just get drubbed like they did in Cleveland.
Right. And I hope that doesn't happen because it will put my Sunday into a bad space. And I don't know. I make myself suffer through a lot of the bad games and watch the whole thing because I feel like I deserve that pain. And I don't know if today I will. I think if it starts to turn bad, as much as I love this team, I could do something better with my time than watch them get just beat down,
I mean, some of them get really tough to watch. Some of those blowouts, I tend to watch a little more Red Zone than I do the Bears game and just kind of check back in on it every now and then. But we'll see. I've enjoyed watching Justin Fields. I think. And I hate to say this, right? Because I think everyone's thought it, but nobody's wanting to say it because everybody's afraid to. But I think as of right now, I think you've seen more of maybe this isn't the guy than you have, okay, this is our franchise quarterback.
I agree.
But I think
I like Justin Fields than there was with Mitch.
I think a lot of us are really hurt still from the whole Mitch thing.
Right.
We're kind of what they call trigger shy or shell shock with the whole Mitch thing. But again, and the NFL is weird, man. Peyton Manning had 40 interceptions or 36 interceptions his first year as a rookie quarterback. At least Fields isn't turning the ball over all the time. He's not. He at least isn't doing that.
And when he is, at least the field, right? Like he just launches a 50-yard pass
and he's got the ability to run. He's got the speed. He's got the legs, and he's got the arm strength. Like you said, he's got the arm strength to throw the ball down the field. So, if they could put a little other pieces together, then I think we'll see this offense really start to take off.
Yep. So I teased this new segment that that I want to do. So I think why don't we give it a shot?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, bare bones, the bare minimum this team needs to do to hopefully pull out a win. I guess I didn't really pick the best matchup to start this segment. Tampa Bay, I don't really think there is a lot they can do or there's a lot they have to do to win, right? So the first one that I had was Justin Fields, right? Up to this point, he's done a really good job of, for the most part, not turning the ball over. He's had some fumbles, a couple interceptions last week. I think obviously last week one of those interceptions was a pass that he thought he had a free play on.
Right. And it was 3rd and 10, so it really was a punt anyways.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not looking at that one, but the one at the end of the half, that one was a killer. You put your team in field goal range and then you take yourself out of the opportunity to get 3 points. I think that the no call and then that other interception at the half was a big turning point for the game last week. So in terms of momentum, I think that the Bears had a lot of the momentum early on in that game, a couple of questionable calls, and it really swung the momentum all the way back to Green Bay. And when you give Rodgers that type of a swing, he's going to kill you, Number 2 was what we talked about with Erik is sacking Tom Brady, right? He's a tough guy to get down. He gets rid of the ball fast. He knows that it hurts to be tackled, so he tries to avoid that at all costs, and he's not afraid to throw the ball away if there's nothing open downfield, you know what I mean? And he's not worried about, oh, well, it's 1st and 10. If I throw the ball away, it's 2nd and 10, because he knows he has the pieces to get that first down, right? But I think you need to see today is Khalil Mack kind of have a game like he had last week, right? Where if he's not getting to Brady, he's at least disrupting his timing, making it difficult for him to hit, that slant route. I also do think that it's going to be important for them to utilize the blitz a little more. As much as I know Tom Brady plays pretty well against the blitz, I think that you need to get that extra pressure. Without Robert Quinn, I think it's going to be difficult for that front four to get to him. I could be wrong. They could come out and blow up the line, but I just feel like without Quinn on the other side, that's really taking a lot of pressure off of Khalil Mack. I think it's going to be more double teams on him, more chipping, more difficult for him to actually get home against the Bucs than it was for him to get to Rodgers last week.
Yeah, I think like you said with the blitzing, I think even if it's not even a full out blitz, but they just bring Roquan or whoever else is playing inside. If they bring somebody up the middle, Brady's really good when you pressure him from the outsides. He's really good at stepping up into the pocket and delivering the ball down the field. He's really, really known for if you get pressure up the middle and you get into his face, he's going to go down. He's not going to let you get – there's a reason he's playing at 44 because other than the year he tore his ACL, which when the guy went low, he's been able to avoid big injuries. That's because he doesn't take hits.
Right.
You don't hit Brady that many times because he'll go down and take the sack before he lets you tee off on him. So if you can get the pressure up the middle, and part of that is making him step up into pressure from the outside. But if you bring pressure up the middle and you can get to him, he's going to go down. He's going to throw the ball away. He's going to do things where he doesn't take those big hits. So I think that's a big key, like you said, is not necessarily sacking him, but getting to him.
Right, but letting him know that you're there. You know what I mean?
Right. You know, they say, make him feel you.
Right. Especially, early on. I think if you can fluster Tom Brady early, he's Tom Brady, so you really can't say anything negative about him. But if you can get to him early, make him make a mistake or two, which he's shown to do this season so far, you have a defense that is opportunistic to where, if he just throws the ball away too quickly, hits a receiver on the hands, ball goes in the air, that's your opportunity. You got to create those opportunities as a defense. And I think by getting to Brady and getting that pressure, that's the best way to really fluster him early on, make them make mistakes early, and then you have to capitalize on that. That was my third.
That's a huge piece right there.
Is capitalizing on opportunities. And I think the main one I'm talking about is, like, if you're in the red zone, right, against this team, you can't settle for 3. As much as it's going to suck, like, if it's 4th and 2, I think you got to go for it, because I think the only way to beat this Tampa Bay team is to score 6 points. And I might even go for 2 points at this, because they're going to score. So you have to score. You can't keep matching 7 and 3. Won't. It's just you'll get so far behind, you'll have no shot at coming back.
Yeah, when they go for it on 4th down, I haven't minded the going for it on 4th down. I think I would have went for it every time they did too. The big thing is I'd like to see better play calls on 4th down. Absolutely. I think their 4th down play calls have been very suspect.
Yeah, a lot of quarterback sneaks, or
you get the quarterback sneaks, the halfback dies, or then they go with the extreme. Yeah. And to go with these complicated plays. It's like, dude, it's 4th and 1, it's 4th and 2. Let's just get the first down.
Right. Give it to the running back who's shown you that he can, go off the edge and get 4 yards, 5 yards,
Right.
And I think that's another thing. If I had to pick a 4th, would be to don't overcomplicate things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like the Bears do that sometimes, where they're like, oh, it's 3rd and 2. Let's, call a 15-yard out and see if we can hold up the offensive line to protect Justin Fields.
Well, I think that's part of this offense. You see Kansas City does the same thing.
Right.
They get 3rd and 2, they get 4th and 1, whatever, and 4th and 1, and all of a sudden you see Mahomes try to throw to the deepest guy in the field, and it's incomplete. And it's like, well, bro, you had the guy open for the first down. You could have run it. You could have done a lot of things. Like, why are you even doing it? And a lot of times it's like, you got to protect yourself. You got to know your quarterback. If he likes to throw deep, you give him a deep receiver. He's gonna throw to him. Yep. But just because there's a route out there doesn't mean you have to throw to it. Take some. A lot of times it's okay to just take what the defense gives you.
Yeah. Now I wonder if Fields has been a little more shy with running since that Cleveland game, because of, he was hit so much. Isn't that where he what game was it where he hyperextended his knee? Is that the Giants? The Lions, maybe?
I think it was the Lions game.
I think it was the Lions, yeah. And, I'm kind of
wondering.
That might
be, the knee might be something to do with it too. It might be sore. It might be harder for him to take off. It might, it might just be trying to protect himself. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where, you don't really know until you go to do it, and you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah. And we've seen that with Mitch the last year, right? When he hurt his shoulder, and then all of a sudden I
still say that's what did it. And I know I get it, right? Like I'm more of a advocate for Matt Nagy than a lot of Bears fans are. As you know, we've had a lot of talks about Matt Nagy.
Yep.
I just, I hear a lot of people say, well, it's got to be the coaching that's telling these guys not to run, because Fields isn't doing it. Trubisky stopped doing it when he used to. I really think that was a Mitch thing, man. I think it was that, like you were just saying, I think it was that Monday night game against Minnesota where he hurt his non-throwing shoulder when he got tackled, because it was like from then on, it was like he ran only when he absolutely had to. I think the best part of this whole Justin Fields thing is, and not to get too far off track, is I don't see any more of those where Mitch would roll around, run all the way to one sideline, and then step out of bounds instead of flipping the ball out of bounds. He would take a 7-yard loss running out of bounds instead of just throwing it away. We saw Justin roll to the entire sideline and once throw it away and once hit somebody downfield. So at least he's got that arm to get it down there. And when you start running around, man, it makes defenses jittery and they want to come up and try to, you see the Bears, and even with Aaron Rodgers, it happened to the Bears. They roll out and the corner says, "Oh, I got to run up and tackle him," and they run up and tackle him, and he just throws it to the receiver that guy was just covering. It's like, well, if you're leaving your receiver, I'm just going to throw it to that guy.
Right, and that's where I think that's why I think it was important, and I've heard other podcasts talk about it. Our buddy Greg Braggs has mentioned it before about how, the fact that they had this whole Andy Dalton thing in the beginning of the season could have played a bigger role in the fact that Justin isn't where we expect him to be. This seven games into the season, you had guys like Zach Wilson who took all the first team reps with his team all off season. They didn't really play a lot of their starters in the preseason, so Justin didn't get a lot of reps with them. I think that hopefully by the end of this season, we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, that spot where he held the ball too long instead of, looking for the open guy 5 yards down the field and taking a sack, hopefully that's gone. You know what I mean? Hopefully he can, learn to read the defense in the way where he was like in Ohio, right? He was able to move the ball downfield really well. He played tough. And I know it's college versus the NFL, but I think that if he's able to just digest a little more the rest of the season, awesome. But my worry is if it's not a big leap forward, right, that they're going to still be like, well, Matt is going to be the guy that we're going to have still work with this kid. And I know how you feel about Nagy. I think, we brought in Foles last year. I know everybody said it was Nagy's guy. I don't really know if I buy that. I highly doubt that Nagy would have decided, hey, of all the quarterbacks in the world, Nick Foles is the one that I want.
Nick Foles is the one I want, right?
Right. But we did not see any type of spark with Nick Foles after that first game where he came in for Nick. You know what I mean? And that worries me. Dalton looked okay. I liked the first game where they had the double packages for him, but I'm worried that if Nagy has too much stink on Justin Fields, that it's going to cause this to be a complete disaster going forward. And I think it all goes up to Pace. Pace hired Nagy. Pace, gets the draft picks. But I think that, and I hate to say that I want the Bears to lose, right? Because what kind of fan wants their team to lose?
Right.
But if they're going to just keep going, 8-8, 9-8, 8-9, like, what does that do for your team?
Yeah, I mean, so, this year, I get where most people are like, oh man, I hope they lose so we get a better draft pick. But we don't have our first round draft pick anyways.
Right.
So I want that draft to be the worst draft pick it could be that we trade away.
Right.
But the big thing is you just want to see Fields look more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like it starts with that. Look like you feel like you belong there. Look like you don't. I don't want to see you be out there and look like a deer in headlights. I want to see you look like you always feel in control. I think the holding the ball, some of that's always going to be there. It's just who he is, and that's okay. Like Deshaun Watson holds the ball too long.
My guy Cutler used to hold the ball too long.
Absolutely. Deshaun Watson holds the ball too long, and he takes sacks sometimes because he just thinks he can get away. He's used to being away from people. When he can't, he's like, oh, fuck. But, he can still move the ball down the field. The big thing with Justin is the rest from here to the end of the year. I just want to see him look the part more and more every week.
Right.
I want to see him look more comfortable.
He belongs.
Yeah, I want to see him look more comfortable. I want to see him play ahead of the chains. I want to see him read 1, 2, no one there. Cool, I'm taking off. Because even if you only get 3, 4, 5 yards with your run, which he's fast enough to get every time he runs the ball, you're going to stay ahead of the chains, and eventually you're going to hit that big play. So, that could go a long way to making this team difference in wins and losses too. And I just want to see every week him look get closer, because you got the two ends of the spectrum, right? You've got the bust and you've got the franchise quarterback. You want him to every week take a step towards that franchise quarterback side.
Right. Absolutely, man. Well, that's the show. I don't really think we have too much more to talk about.
No,
we talked
covered it all.
That we want to keep these at about an hour. We don't want to run over too much. I do have one thing to show you.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at that.
The new USN Undefeated Sports Network t-shirt. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, DM me at SportCourtAC. It's right down there. If you're interested in getting one. I already have a couple people who have messaged me. I'm placing an order in a week to order a few. So if you're interested, make sure you're messaging me, get me your size, and I can get a few, and we can discuss details on that. But other than that, Turtle Man, I thought it was a good show, and hopefully we can get the Bears. We can get back here next week with a Bears victory.
Yeah, hopefully we're talking about a Bears win and how we're surprised and how great Justin Fields looked. And but other than that, man, it was a great show. I love talking with Erik. It's always fun having him on, and it was just nice to get back on. Like we said, we had the last couple of weeks where you were sick and I had surgery and everything, but glad to be back on. And not sure if it's next week or what week, but to have Stephen Edwards hop back on with us, that'll be a good time. And man, other than that, just everybody go find me at Twitter, man. I need followers. I think I got like 20 followers. I need to up my Twitter game.
Yeah, the Undefeated Sports Network, man, they're doing pretty good. They got more than me so far, but
I only got like 20. So it's Turtles_take. So go find me at Twitter and follow, and tell me my takes suck, or tell me what you think, and we'll debate it on Twitter. And I'm gonna get more active on there and start having some discussions. Maybe having some discussions during the games and stuff. So
I like it.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
I know that USN is going to be having an Instagram account starting here pretty soon.
Cool. Yes.
So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, go follow me at SportCourtAC, at UndefeatedSN21. We really enjoy, the back and forth. I know that we've had a lot, especially since the Bulls started, a lot of good back and forth on the Bulls on Twitter. On the Undefeated, Twitter account. So make sure you guys go follow. Turtle, it was fun, and I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.